Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda O Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chaksulmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we'll continue on from Caitanya Caritamrta, Antya Lila. Text number 80.
You touched on 78.
Okay.
And the meaning 79.
Okay, yes. Okay, so text number 80. Okay, text number 80. After writing this verse on a palm leaf, Rupa Goswami put it somewhere in his thatched roof and went to bathe in the sea. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went there to meet him, and when he saw the leaf pushed into the roof and saw the verse, he began to read it. By reading the verse, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was overwhelmed by ecstatic love. At that very time, Rupa Goswami returned, having finished bathing in the sea. Seeing the Lord, Sri Rupa Goswami fell flat in the courtyard to offer obeisances. The Lord slapped him mildly in love and spoke as follows. My heart is very confidential. How did you know my mind in this way? After saying this, he firmly embraced Rupa Goswami. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took that verse and showed it to Swarup Damodar for him to examine. Then the Lord questioned him. How could Rupa Goswami have understood my heart? The Lord asked. Swarup Damodar replied, I can understand that you have already bestowed your causeless mercy upon him. No one could otherwise understand this meaning. I can therefore guess that previously you bestowed upon him your causeless mercy. Okay, I think we stopped on this yesterday. Okay, text 88. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, Rupa Goswami met me at Prayag. Knowing him to be a suitable person, I naturally bestowed my mercy upon him. So yesterday, towards the end, we were seeing how there was this one particular verse Mahaprabhu used to recite during the Ratha Yatra, and none of Mahaprabhu's associates, they could figure out the deep meaning of this verse, and they were bewildered. Only Swarup Damodar Goswami, Mahaprabhu's most intimate associate, could understand the meaning of it. But when Rupa Goswami hears this verse, he could immediately understand the meaning of this verse, and then he composes another verse explaining the meaning of that verse, chanted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Mahaprabhu sees that Rupa Goswami has understood his heart, Mahaprabhu is surprised. How is it that Rupa Goswami was able to understand what's deep in my heart? And then Swarup Damodar Goswami, he replies that it is only by your causeless mercy Rupa Goswami has been able to understand this. Unless one has your divine mercy, one cannot understand these things. Okay, so that's the way we stopped yesterday. Continue on. Text 90, Swarup Damodar said, as soon as I saw the unique composition of this verse, I could immediately understand that you had bestowed upon him your special mercy. By seeing a result, one can understand the cause of that result. Text 92. The river Ganges flowing in the heavenly planets is full of golden lotus flowers, and we, the residents of those planets, eat the stems of the flowers. Thus we are very beautiful, more so than the inhabitants of any other planet. This is due to the law of cause and effect. For if one eats food in the mode of goodness, the mode of goodness increases the beauty of his body. After the 4 months of Chaturmasya, all the Vaishnavas of Bengal returned to their homes. But Srila Rupa Goswami remained in Jagannath Puri, under the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So as we were discussing earlier on, it was the general habit of the devotees in Navadvip of Bengal that every year they would go on pilgrimage from Bengal to Orissa to Jagannath-puri to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they would participate in the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, they would participate in the Rath Yatra, and then it's not that after Rath Yatra they would pack their bags and leave, but they'll continue on staying with Mahaprabhu for the entire Chaturmasya, which is 4 months. So for a long time they used to stay in Jagannath-puri. 4 months they would spend in Jagannath-puri taking the association of Mahaprabhu. Then after that they would leave and go back to Bengal. But even after the Chaturmasya, it's mentioned here, Rupa Goswami, he still remains in Jagannath-puri. 94. One day while Rupa Goswami was writing his book, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly appeared. As soon as Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami saw the Lord coming, they both stood up and then fell down to offer their respectful obeisances. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced them both and then sat down. The Lord inquired, "What kind of book are you writing?" He held up a palm leaf that was a page of the manuscript, and when he saw the fine handwriting, his mind was very pleased. Thus being pleased, the Lord praised the writing by saying, "The handwriting of Rupa Goswami is just like rows of pearls." So one day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he just comes to Haridas Thakur's hut and he inquires from Rupa Goswami that, what is this book you're writing? What is this drama you're writing? Can you please show me some sample of what you've written so far? And then in those days, the devotees, they used to write books on palm leaves. So on palm leaves, they used to scribe the verses. So Mahaprabhu, he picks up one huge palm leaf, a page of the manuscript written by Rupa Goswami. And when Mahaprabhu sees this manuscript, he's astonished at the wonderful handwriting of Srila Rupa Goswami. So it's mentioned here that Srila Rupa Goswami's handwriting was super neat and very beautiful to observe. It was like a work of art. Just like our Yogesh Prabhu is also very nicely writing the Bhagavatam verses. So Srila Rupa Goswami's handwriting was also like that. It was like a work of art, and Mahaprabhu is appreciating Srila Rupa Goswami's handwriting, saying that this handwriting of Rupa Goswami is so beautiful. It is just like a row of pearls. So from this we can see how we were discussing this last week about how in Vaishnava culture there should be this culture of appreciating the wonderful qualities and the good qualities of other Vaishnavas. And one should take pleasure in seeing the good in others. In first canto, in Queen Kunti's prayers, which comes in chapter 8, in one of her prayers, Queen Kunti says that if we do 4 things, if we do nicely, then we can see the lotus feet of the Lord, and having seen or taken darshan of the lotus feet of the Lord, we can overcome the cycle of birth and death. What are these 4 things? Queen Kunti says, Shrinvanti Gayanti, Grinanti Abhikshnasha, Smaranti Nandanti, Tabe Hitam Jana. So first thing is Shrinvanti, then Gayanti. Shrinvanti means to hear about Krishna's pastimes. Gayanti means to sing or chant about Krishna's pastimes or the holy name. Grinanti Abhikshnasa. Grinanti Abhikshnasa means one must continuously keep on chanting and continuously keep on hearing, day in and day out. And third thing she says is Smaranti. One must remember the Lord in one's mind. Then the fourth thing she says is Nandanti. And Nandanti is something very unique. Usually we always hear, okay, we have to hear, we have to chant, and we have to remember. So these 3 things are always very common in the verses of the Shastras. But this 4th thing that Queen Kunti adds is very unique. She uses the word Nandanti. What does Nandanti mean? Nandanti means taking pleasure in others doing the above mentioned 3 activities, which means taking pleasure in seeing another Vaishnava chant the holy name, or taking pleasure in seeing another Vaishnava giving Bhagavatam class, or taking pleasure in seeing another person reading Bhagavatam very nicely. So this is what Nandanti means. Nandanti means taking pleasure in other devotees performing their bhakti, taking pleasure in other devotees doing their devotional service. And I was listening to one lecture by His Holiness Radhana Swami Maharaj, and he was mentioning that this 4th thing that Queen Kunti is mentioning is so important that if we just do this one thing, if we just do only Nandanti, just watch other devotees and generally take pleasure in seeing them doing their bhakti, then just simply by doing this one thing, we can go back home, back to Godhead. That's the power His Holiness Radha Maharaj explains of this simple process of Nandanti, the simple process of taking pleasure in other Vaishnavas doing their bhakti, and genuinely appreciating that, and genuinely glorifying that. And we're seeing Mahaprabhu displaying this as the ideal devotee. He's picking up Rupa Goswami's manuscript and he's noticing, wow, this handwriting is so beautiful. This handwriting is just like a row of pearls. I've never seen anything like this. So in the same way, Prabhupada has explained we should have this honeybee mentality, not a housefly mentality. What is the honeybee mentality? The honeybee is always looking for the nectar. The honeybee is always observing different flowers, and he goes to one flower, takes the nectar, goes to another flower, takes the nectar. In this way, the honeybee is going to different flowers and taking the essence, taking the nectar. So that Prabhupada is saying is us observing other Vaishnavas and seeing the good in other Vaishnavas, observing the good qualities and generally appreciating that and glorifying that. Because when we appreciate another Vaishnava's devotional service, their bhakti, we make advancement ourselves, and that other Vaishnava whom we're glorifying, he also advances in his spiritual life. How? Okay, we make advancement because we're glorifying another devotee. So Krishna, in our heart, he's noticing this, and Krishna will purify our heart and he'll help us advance. The other devotee, he also furthers his devotional service. How? Because generally when someone comes up to us and says, Prabhuji or Madhiji, you sang very nicely together. Then when we hear that, we feel encouraged to sing more for Gopinath's pleasure. Okay, devotees in the community, they're appreciating my singing. Or someone says, Prabhu, you gave a nice class today. Then that devotee, he gets inspired to study more and to give more classes. So in this way, his enthusiasm to do devotional service increases. So not only does the person glorifying, he make advancement, but the person whom we're offering the glorification or the appreciation, he also gets inspired to do more devotional service. So in this way, everyone benefits. We benefit, and the person we're appreciating, he also benefits. He also gets inspired to continue on in his devotional service, to expand his service more and more. So that's why it's a win-win situation. That's why we'll see this principle displayed in Mahaprabhu's dealings with his associates. There will be constant appreciation and glorification of different Vaishnavas, good qualities. Okay, we'll continue on. Text 98. While reading the manuscript, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw a verse on that page, and as soon as he read it, he was overwhelmed by ecstatic love. So first thing Mahaprabhu observes is the wonderful handwriting. Now he's reading the manuscript itself. He's going through the Sanskrit. And while he's going through the manuscript, he comes across a very beautiful, powerful verse glorifying the holy name of the Lord. And later on we'll see that this verse composed by Rupa Goswami is such a powerful verse glorifying the holy name that when Mahaprabhu's associates, they will read this verse, they will conclude that we have read so many shastras and we have read and heard so many verses glorifying the holy name of the Lord in so many different shastras. But never have we come across such a wonderful verse like this, written by Rupa Goswami, which glorifies the holy name so nicely as this verse by Rupa Goswami. So this is the praise that Mahaprabhu's associates gave to this particular verse written by Rupa Goswami. So I'll just sing it out loud. It's a very nice verse to memorize. Tunde tandavani ratim vitanute Tundavali labdaye Karna krodha kadambini gatayate Karnan buddhevya spriham Cheta prangana sangini vijayate Sarvendriyanam kritim No jane janita kiyad biramrite Krishneti varnadvai. Okay, I'll read the translation. Okay, first thing Rupa Goswami is saying is Tunde tandavani ratim vitanute tundavali labdahe. Tunde means the mouth. So the first thing Rupa Goswami is saying that when I chant these two syllables, Krishna, with my tongue, with my mouth, the transcendental taste of just chanting these two syllables, Krishna, is so nectarian, is so attractive, that I wish I had millions of mouths. So with millions of tongues, I can just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Because it's so much nectarian, just chanting these two syllables, Krishna. Then the next thing he says is, Karna Kroda Kadambini Gatayate Karnan Buddhebhya Spriha. Karna means ear. So we know from Mahabharata, Karna means ear. Karna was conceived through Queen Kunti's ear. So the second thing he's saying, when I chant these two syllables, Krishna, and when the transcendental sound vibration of Krishna's holy name enters into my ears, that sound vibration is so nice, so beautiful, so nectarian. I wish I had millions of ears. With millions of ears, I could hear more and more Krishna's beautiful transcendental holy name. So from this you can imagine how much taste Srila Rupa Goswami had for hearing and chanting Krishna's holy name. When he's chanting Hare Krishna, he's wishing, wow, this is so tasty, chanting Hare Krishna, I wish I had millions of tongues. Wow, the sound vibration of Krishna is so nice, I wish I had millions of ears so I can just drink on the nectar of Krishna's holy name more and more. Then he says, Cheta prangana sangini vijayate sarvendriya kritim. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of my heart, it conquers the activities of my mind, and therefore all my senses become inert. So with my tongue I chant, then it enters into my ear, then through my ear it goes, the holy name comes into my heart. And when the holy name enters into my courtyard of my heart, it just completely puts me in samadhi, it just completely conquers all the activities of my senses, it completely conquers my mind, and I can't think of anything else. My whole existence, my whole being is just completely absorbed in the holy name. So it's a very amazing, beautiful glorification given by Rupa Goswami of the holy name. And we'll see later on when the devotees of Mahaprabhu, they would hear this verse, all of them will say that we've heard so many verses glorifying the holy name, but never have we ever come across such a wonderful glorification of the holy name as this verse of Rupa Goswami. Text 100. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted this verse, Haridas Thakur, upon hearing the vibration, became jubilant, and he began to dance while praising its meaning. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he loudly recites this verse, and when Haridas Thakur hears this, being Namaracharya, he becomes so pleased, he starts to dance in ecstasy, hearing such a wonderful glorification of the holy name. And then Haridas Thakur, he also starts praising this beautiful verse. One has to learn about the beauty and transcendental position of the holy name of the Lord by hearing the revealed scriptures from the mouths of devotees. Nowhere else can we hear of the sweetness of the Lord's holy name. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Haridas and Rupa Goswami and left for the seaside to perform his noontime duties. On the next day, after visiting the temple of Lord Jagannath, as usual, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, and Swarup Damodar. They all went together to Srila Rupa Goswami, and on the way, the Lord greatly praised his qualities. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recited the two important verses, he felt great pleasure. Thus, as if he had 5 mouths, he began to praise his devotee. Okay, so then the next day it's given. At noontime, as usual, Mahaprabhu is going and attending the Upala Bhoga ceremony of Lord Jagannath, which is the Bhoga offering which happens at noontime, just like we have for our Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. And then after attending the ceremony, Mahaprabhu is traveling to Srila Haridas Thakur's residence, where Rupa Goswami is staying. But this time, he is not going alone. He is taking Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, and Swarup Damodar, 3 of his very close associates with him this time. And along the way, as 4 of them are traveling to Haridas Thakur's residence, Mahaprabhu is glorifying Srila Rupa Goswami in front of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, and Swarup Damodar. And it's mentioned here by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that while Mahaprabhu was glorifying Srila Rupa Goswami, he was glorifying him so much with such enthusiasm and bliss that it was as if Mahaprabhu had 5 mouths. So from this we'll see how, as devotees, what should our mood be. Generally, it's the other way around for us. When we see any faults or when we're gossiping about some other devotees, at that time it seems that we have 5 mouths. Did you know what he or she was doing? Did you know what happened to this family? Did you know what they're doing? At that time it seems that we have 5 mouths. Suddenly we just start talking, at fast speed. And it's as if we had 5 mouths. But that's technically all prajalpa and should be avoided. And on the other hand, Mahaprabhu is showing by his personal example that with that same enthusiasm, we should apply when it comes to glorifying other devotees, other Vaishnavas. At that time, we should glorify as if we had 5 mouths with that intensity. And that's what Mahaprabhu is doing. He's glorifying Srila Rupa Goswami's beautiful devotional qualities in front of his personal associates. Text number 106. Just to examine Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, the Lord began to praise the transcendental qualities of Sri Rupa Goswami before them. So this is another significant point. What does it mean? Just to examine Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, the Lord began to praise the transcendental qualities of Sri Rupa Goswami before them. So generally the conditioned tendency is when we hear glorification of someone else, we'll feel a little jealous, we'll feel a little envious. And that's mature conditioning. In the spiritual world, there's no question of jealousy, there's no question of envy. And in the spiritual world, when devotees, they hear glorification of other devotees' qualities, instead of being jealous, they feel very happy. And they think, yes, definitely this devotee is like this, definitely he is glorious like this. So, as Mahaprabhu is glorifying Rupa Goswami in front of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, Mahaprabhu is closely observing to see if they are showing any symptoms of jealousy or enviousness by hearing the transcendental qualities of Rupa Goswami. That's what it means. Just to examine Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, the Lord began to praise the transcendental qualities of Sri Rupa Goswami before them. So this, Prabhupada explains, this is one of the tests in spiritualization. If we want to, one of the parameters we can use to test whether we're making spiritual advancement is to see whether we're becoming jealous or envious of other devotees' advancement, or whether we're generally feeling happy at seeing the good qualities of others. When someone is singing very nicely, whether we're feeling a bit jealous or whether we're generally feeling happy. Wow, this devotee, he sang Gorati very nicely, or this devotee, he's so enthusiastically is playing Mridanga. So we can be a bit contemplative and observe ourselves. How is our mind working? Are we feeling jealous or envious, or are we generally appreciating the good qualities of others? Now, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Roy, they're all eternal associates of the Lord. There's no question of them ever being overcome by jealousy or envy. But just for the sake of pastime, it's mentioned like this, that Mahaprabhu was examining them. Text 107. Characteristically, the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not take seriously any offense committed by a pure devotee. Okay, this is another very important verse of CC. This verse describes the personality of Krishna. In one simple verse, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he is going to summarize the personality of Krishna. So just like we all have a personality, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he also has a personality. So just like we can define different devotees in different ways to explain their personality. Like, okay, Soul Prabhu, he's very enthusiastic, who's usually very jolly and full of energy. He's very outgoing, it's very nice to be in his association. He's always full of good energy, So in like that, we can describe Soul Prabhu's personality in, a few sentences or a few words. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's going to do the same thing for Krishna's personality. Now, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's so many things we can say about his personality. But Srila Rupa Goswami will go into the very essence, and in one very simple verse, he will sum up the nature of Krishna, the personality of Krishna. Okay, I'll read the Bengali. Ishvara swabhava bhaktera nalaya aparada alpaseva bahumane atma paryanta prasada. So what is Ishvara swabhava? What is the swabhava? What is the personality? What is the nature of Gopinath? What is the personality of Krishna? Ishvara swabhava bhaktera nalaya aparada. He says three things about Krishna's personality. Number one, Krishna is such a person that he never takes any offense from his devotees. Bhaktera means devotees, nalaya aparada. Characteristically, the Supreme Personality Godhead does not take seriously any offense committed by a pure devotee. So for his sincere, serious devotees, Krishna, he overlooks all of the offenses. He doesn't take it so seriously. That's point number one. Bhaktera nalaya aparada. Second thing Rupa Goswami mentions is Alpa seva bahu mane. Alpa means little bit. Seva means service. Bahu means very great, very big. Mane means to accept. So the second thing about Krishna's personality, Krishna Goswami is saying that Krishna, he's such a magnanimous, kind person that you just do a little service, alpa seva. You just do a tiny little service, and Krishna being so kind, he will consider that service to be very great, to be bahumani. He'll consider that service to be a very, very great thing. The Lord accepts whatever small service a devotee renders as being such a great service. So you just do a tiny thing, Krishna will magnify it. That's why it's mentioned, Lord Jagannath, he has big, big eyes. So His Holiness Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj, he explains this, that Lord Jagannath, he has big eyes, not because he's trying to look to see where we're going wrong. All the faults we're committing in bhakti. No, Lord Jagannath, he has big, big eyes to find out some good qualities in his devotees. Even though someone might have so many faults, Lord Jagannath, with his big, big eyes, he'll pick out one small good quality in us. Even though it could be very insignificant, very small, still, Lord Jagannath, with his big eyes, he'll find that good quality in us. And even though it's something very small, very alpa, he will magnify it into something very big and tell Lord Balram, tell Subhadramani that you see this, you see what he did? He just moved the mat from here to there. You see what he did? He just cleaned this part of the temple. You see what he did? He just chanted my holy name for a few seconds. And Krishna will take this as something very, very big, very, very great. And in return, what will Krishna do? That's the third thing. Point number one, he never takes any offense or faults of his devotees very seriously. He overlooks. Point number two, for a small service we do, Krishna will magnify it and think that, wow, he did such a big service for me. Point number three, Atma Paryanta Prasada, which means just for a small service we do, Krishna, he feels so grateful that out of gratitude to reciprocate with his devotees, what does Krishna do? What does Lord Jagannath do? He gives his very self in return to that devotee. That's what Atma Paryanta Prasada means. Prasada means mercy. So generally, if someone does something for us, we have to reciprocate. We have to give something back to that person. So Lord Jagannath, Krishna being very merciful, we just do a small service for them. Lord Jagannath will take that small service as something very great. And seeing that small service as something very great, Lord Jagannath, Krishna, they feel so much gratitude, so much gratefulness towards their devotees, that out of gratitude, Krishna, he just gives him his very self to his devotee as prasada. That's what Atma, his very self, he gives in mercy. So I'll read the translation again. Characteristically, the Supreme Personality Godhead, point number one, does not take seriously any offense committed by a pure devotee. Point number two, the Lord accepts whatever small service a devotee renders as being such a great service that he is prepared to give even himself, what to speak of other benedictions. So such a beautiful verse to memorize. And the wonderful thing about CC is that Bengali verses, they're very lot easier to memorize than Sanskrit verses. You can very easily memorize. And it seems very simple, but such deep meaning is just there in this simple verse. Then in text 108, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he'll quote another verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Rupa Goswami will talk about the same meaning explained in this. So we'll skip that, we'll go to text 109. When Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami saw that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come with his intimate devotees, they both immediately fell down like logs and offered prayers to their lotus feet. Going back to the previous verse, we can see so many examples of Krishna demonstrating these qualities. For example, classical case with the example of Putana. Right? Putana came to murder Krishna, to poison Krishna. But did Krishna see that fault in her? No, Krishna overlooked that fault. Instead, what did Krishna see? That she's coming to feed me. Even though that's technically not what she was doing, but still Krishna somehow or other, with his big eyes, he was able to find some good quality in Putana, although she had no good qualities. He overlooked her demonic mentality, and instead he saw, okay, she's dressed as my mother, and she's trying to feed me just like my mother or my nurse. So I'll give her the position of my nurse in the spiritual world. So that's a classic example of this verse. Krishna overlooks one's offenses, one's faults. Krishna takes something very small we do and magnifies it as something very great. And then feeling very grateful, what does Krishna do? He gives his very self. And that's what Krishna does to Putana. He gives the position of his mother in the spiritual world. Another example, I was hearing today class by His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Maharaj was sharing a very common pastime we've all heard before of the two thieves that one day they came across Nimai, baby Nimai. And baby Nimai, he had some nice opulent jewelry, some nice golden bangles. Even now in India you'll see small kids, mothers or parents, they'll put some nice bangles around the children's palm, hands, wrists. So Nimai also similarly, he had some nice jewelry around his ankles or his wrists, his neck. So when these two thieves, they see baby Nimai with all this nice jewelry, they immediately get attracted and they come up with a plan. Okay, somehow we'll sneak this little boy, take him to our hideout, and then do the necessary, steal all the ornaments. So they come, they pick up baby Nimai while he's all by himself. They put baby Nimai on their shoulders and they carry him off. And they tell him that we'll take you around town and we have some very nice sandesh for you. And Nimai, he really loved sandesh. Krishna loves milk sweets. So Nimai was happy. It's like, yes, I love sandesh. Let's go. So they carried him and Nimai was on the shoulder and he was going for a ride around Navadvip. And as he's going, the thieves, they're feeding baby Nimai sandesh. And Nimai happily, Maharaj was explaining that Nimai was happily taking the sandesh from the thieves and happily eating and enjoying a ride around Navadvip. Eating sandesh, going around town, and he was having a good time. Just like when Trinavarta, he picked up Krishna, he went into the sky, Krishna was also having a good time. Krishna got to have a nice aerial view of Vrindavan. Just like people, they go on top, right, to, Center Point Tower, something like that, some big building, or go on top of Harbour Bridge, or they go up in a helicopter or in those air balloons like they have in Parramatta during Australia Day. You can go up high into the sky and you can get a nice aerial view. So when Trinavarta, he picked up Krishna, Krishna was having a good time. Krishna was enjoying. He was getting to see a nice aerial view of Vrindavan Dham. So in the same way, baby Nimai, Maharaj was explaining, he was having a very good time. Very nicely eating sandesh, nicely going for a ride around Navadvip. And as we know, the story goes, the two thieves, they carry away Nimai to their hideout, and then finally they reach their hideout, they put baby Nimai down, but then they realize that actually it's not their hideout, they've come back to the exact same place where they stole baby Nimai. They've come back again to the house of baby Nimai. And during the whole time, the parents of baby Nimai, Sachimada, Jagannath Mishra, they were all frantically looking for Nimai everywhere. And then finally when they see him, it's like the life came back and they all come and embrace baby Nimai. And then the two thieves, they get worried and they all run away. And Maharaj was explaining that what happened to these two thieves, what was their destination? And Maharaj explained that because they rendered service to the Supreme Lord, although their intention was to rob the Supreme Personality of Godhead of his jewels, still Krishna, he was saying the good thing, as we're explaining. He overlooks the bad, and you just do some small service, Krishna, he takes that as something very big. So Maharaj was explaining that Baby Nimai, he overlooked these thieves' demonic mentality, and instead, what did Baby Nimai see? He saw that these two thieves, they made me very happy today. They gave me a lot of nice sandesh. I enjoyed the sandesh they were feeding me, and I enjoyed the ride, I enjoyed the tour around Navadvip with these two thieves, and because of that nice service they did to me, because of them making me happy today, Rana Maharaj explains, by the mercy of the Lord, eventually they all went back home, back to Godhead. So that's another example. Just like Putana we have in Krishna Lila, this is another example in Chaitanya Lila. Also similar pastimes are given of Lord Jagannath. For example, it's given during Ratha Yatra, if there are some drunkards that some or other happen to come by the Ratha Yatra. And being in a drunken state, while seeing the Ratha Yatra, in being in a drunken state, they trip over and they fall down. What does Lord Jagannath see? He doesn't see as two drunkards falling down. Instead, he sees that, wow, these two personalities are so great. They're offering obeisances to me. They're offering dandavas. They're offering obeisance to me. And Lord Jagannath, he gives the two drunkards the credit of offering obeisances. So this is the mood of Krishna. Krishna's whole mood is that somehow or other he wants to give us spiritual credit. Somehow or other he wants to bring us back home, back to Godhead. He loves us so much that he can't bear separation from us. So this is the mood of Lord Jagannath, this is the mood of Krishna, that they overlook whatever faults we have. Instead, they see all the good things we're doing and they take that as something very big and they give maximum mercy. So we can imagine if this is how merciful Krishna is, if this is how merciful Gopinath is, then how much more merciful must Srimati Radharani be? If the father is so merciful, then the mother who is more merciful, we can't imagine Srimati Radharani's compassion, Srimati Radharani's kindness. It's even greater than that of Krishna. So, inconceivable for us. Okay, text 109. When Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami saw that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come with his intimate devotees, they both immediately fell down like logs and offered prayers to their lotus feet. So when Haridas Thakur, Rupa Goswami, they see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu along with his personal associates, Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, immediately they offer dandavats, just like logs of wood, and then they offer prayers to their lotus feet. Vancha kalpa tarubhascha, kripa sindhubhyevcha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo, namo namaha. Thus Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal devotees met Rupa Goswami and Haridas Thakur. The Lord then sat down in an elevated place with his devotees. Rupa Goswami and Haridas Thakur sat at the foot of the elevated place where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting. Although everyone asked them to sit on the same level as the Lord and his associates, they did not do so. So Mahaprabhu and his associates, they enter the hut of Haridas Thakur, and they're offered a nice elevated sitting place. And then Mahaprabhu and his associates, they asked Rupa Goswami and Haridas Thakur to also join them and sit along with them on the elevated place. But Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami, following proper etiquette, being very humble, they refused the request. Although Mahaprabhu and his associates were repeatedly asking them, please sit with us. Why you're sitting on the floor, sit with us. But Rupa Goswami and Haridas Thakur, they politely declined and they sat on the floor, on a lower platform. So again, this is Vaishnava etiquette being displayed. Among senior Vaishnavas, we should give them an elevated seat and we should sit on a low level. And I was remembering one lecture, Radhashyam Prabhu, he was explaining. One time he came to take darshan of his spiritual master, His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And at that time, Radhanath Swami Maharaj, out of his humility, he was sitting on some bench or sofa, and he asked Radhashyam Prabhu to also come and sit with him along, also on that elevated sitting spot, either a sofa or some seat. And Radhashyam Prabhu, he politely declined. No, how can I sit with you, Maharaj, on the sofa? I'll just sit on the floor, this is good. But Maharaj was insisting out of his humility that no, please, you come join me, it's okay, you don't have to sit on the floor. But then Radhashyam Prabhu politely declined. And Radhashyam Prabhu, he was again mentioning the same point, that devotees are spiritual masters, out of humility, they might say, okay, come, be with us on an equal level, but from our side, we should follow proper etiquette and we should sit on a lower level like that. So, like this, so many little intricacies of Vaishnava etiquette we can pick up from these dealings of Mahaprabhu and his associates. Text 112. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or another example comes to mind. One time, Srila Prabhupada, he came into the temple room and he took darshan of the deities, and at that time, devotees, they naturally came with a garland to offer to Srila Prabhupada. And usually, Prabhupada will very graciously, he will accept whatever garlands are given to him. But in this particular instance, Prabhupada, he refused to take the garland. Why? What was the reason? Prabhupada said that Krishna, on the altar, the deities, they're not wearing a garland, so how can I wear a garland? He is the master, I am the servant. How can the servant wear a garland while the master is not wearing a garland? So at that particular time, the deities, they didn't have a garland around them. So that's why Prabhupada, he didn't accept the garland in that same mood. So like this, there's this Vaishnava etiquette that among senior devotees, we always show that respect. Text 112, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Rupa Goswami to read the verse they had previously heard, Rupa Goswami, because of great shyness, did not read it, but instead remained silent. Then Swarup Damodar Goswami recited the verse, and when all the devotees heard it, their minds were struck with wonder. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's asking Rupa Goswami to please recite those wonderful verses which I had read in your manuscript before, so my friends can also hear, so the other Vaishnavas can also hear. But Rupa Goswami, naturally, he was feeling very shy out of his humility, and he was feeling too shy to recite these verses, because a Vaishnava, he never likes to be glorified. Conditioned nature is, okay, for a conditioned soul, when we hear our own glorification, it's like nectar to our ears. It's like, yes, please glorify me more, please continue speaking more glories about me. It's like, very nice for our ears. Like Navin Narad Prabhu, he says, Navin Narad Prabhu is like, like the leading book distributor. He's like the Acharya book distribution. And he mentions that the one thing, the one subject that every single person in this world, they like to talk about, they like to hear about the most, is their name and things about them. So if you want to connect with someone, you ask them what their name is, and you ask them what they do. You just ask them about themselves. What's your name? What do you do? How are things? How is your garden? How are the children? You just talk about themselves, because that's the number one subject everyone likes to talk about. What is the number one subject everyone likes to talk about? Their own lives, their own selves. So that's the general conditioned nature. Everyone likes to hear their own glorification, everyone likes to talk about themselves, and everyone likes to hear their own name. So in book distribution, Navin Narad Prabhu, he says, okay, you use that as a strategy. You find out what the name is and you keep repeating them. So Peter, how are things going, Peter? How is the job? What do you do? Like this, you develop connection, and then you become their friend. Then once you become their friend, you just show the book, ask them for donation, they'll happily give, because you're their friend. You got to know their names, and they've shared personal things about their lives, that, okay, I am so-and-so, this is happening in my life, this is what I'm doing. Then once you establish that friendship, then a friend is giving a book, asking for donation, they will happily give a donation, take a book. So this is general conditioned nature, but for devotees of Supreme Lord, it's the opposite. The last thing they want to hear is their own glorification. And we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also exemplifying this. Whenever any devotees, they would come up and glorify Mahaprabhu, saying, you're the Supreme Personal Godhead, you're the Avatar, you're Swayam Krishna coming in Kali Yuga, Mahaprabhu would immediately cover his ears and chant, Vishnu, Vishnu, please don't speak like this. And Mahaprabhu would immediately run away from the scene. So this is the mood of, this should be the mood of all Vaishnavas, that we shouldn't like hearing our own glorification. We should run away whenever there is any glorification. His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he says that whenever any glorification comes towards us, directed towards us, it's like a hot burning coal being thrown at us. It's very dangerous. If a hot burning coal is thrown at us, and if we catch it close to our heart, what will happen? We'll burn ourselves. The longer we hold that hot burning coal to our hearts, to our chest, our hands will burn, our chest will burn, and we'll damage ourselves. So in the same way, His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj says, whenever any glorification comes, and if we hold on to it, take it to our heart, that yes, I am so great, yes, what this person is saying is true, yes, these are my good qualities, these are my wonderful, exemplary devotional qualities. If we hold it close to our heart, then actually we'll go backwards in our spiritual life. Because then naturally pride will come, arrogance will come, and we'll go backwards. Just like we see cases like Indra, for example. So what should we do? Just like if someone throws some hot object at us, what do? You just catch it and you just throw it off to someone else. Right? You don't hold on to it, because the more you hold on to it, the more you burn yourself. So if some hot object is thrown at us, you just take it and you just deflect it, you just throw it somewhere else. So that, Radhanath Maharaj explains, is whenever any praise, appreciation, glorification comes to us, instead of holding it close to our hearts, we should take it and we should pass it on to our spiritual masters. Which means we should say, okay, thank you for your kind words, Prabhuji or Mataji. Actually, it's all the mercy of my spiritual master. It's all the mercy of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. Because of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath's mercy, because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, or because of the wonderful guidance of my mentor or my spiritual masters, I was able to do the service like this. Or because this particular devotee, he showed me how to do the service nicely, I just followed his instruction, therefore I was able to do this. So whatever credit or glorification comes, we take it and we pass it on to other Vaishnavas, to our spiritual masters, or to Krishna. In this way we'll be protected. His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj explains. So this wonderful display of Vaishnava mood qualities we'll see again and again displayed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. So Mahaprabhu, naturally he wants to glorify Rupa Goswami in front of the other Vaishnavas. He wants all the Vaishnavas to know how great of a Vaishnava Rupa Goswami is from his side. But from Rupa Goswami's side, he's very humble. He doesn't want to be glorified in front of others. So he's feeling shy to read out the verses he's written in his manuscript. So then what happens? Swarup Damodar, he takes the manuscript and then he recites the verse out loud so the other Vaishnavas can hear. Then Swarup Damodar Goswami recited the verse, and when all the devotees heard it, their minds were struck with wonder. Okay, I think we'll stop here. It's 8:30. Shri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Jaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, entire Gaur Pamanande, Hari Hari Bol. Namaskar.